Hello and welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Schuster, and for this story, the tables have turned because I'm the one who's being interviewed. I fell for a romance scam. Once I realized that I had been scammed, I decided to go to the media and to help others. The first person that I went to was investigative reporter Pam Zeckman. She's with CBS 2 Channel News, and with her story, I was able to reach people from New Zealand all the way to Boston. After that, I then went to Soldier's Perspective, and the reason that I went to them is because my scammer claimed that he was a United States Air Force pilot, and I wanted to talk to people who are in the military. Then the third person that I went to, the third group that I went to, that was with the Chicago Division of the United States Postal Inspectors. They have a show every Wednesday that you can listen to live on a website because they are here and they are dedicated to help teach you what kind of scams are out there and how you or your family members can avoid being scammed. Okay, so let's listen to Don't Fall For It.
Dr. Schuster, I'd like to welcome you to Don't Fall For It.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, it's very interesting as we get closer to Valentine's Day and we talk about these sweetheart scams. You were actually a victim of one of these types of scams. Can you talk to the listeners about, first let's start out with when this began.
This began in the beginning of September of 2009,
Okay.
where I was on a dating site, and a person had said that he was a United States Air Force pilot, that he was a widow, that he had a young child, that he was in Afghanistan, and he was going to be coming home in December, and that he was looking for love.
Okay, so this begins in September, and, right away, was there a connection with this person that you were emailing?
There was a connection. I told you off air because I did actually ask the night before that he sent me the letter that I asked for a man who had a young child and would possibly be a widow because of my age. I didn't think I could have kids.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine my surprise the next day I get this letter. I thought it was fate. So then we started to email back and forth, and he also would bring in the words fates and soulmates, and very much liked my profile and liked my answers, and very quickly practically saying he's in love with me. Let me just say also, he said that he was working with the Taliban and Al Qaeda, and that he was with special forces. So he said that he was very top secrets. He couldn't call me. He didn't have access to his credit cards or bank accounts, all because of the work that he did was so top secret. I believed him. I didn't know anything about the military.
Let me ask you this, Lilo. He sent you some pictures then?
After about a week or two, he sent me pictures, and the scammers use very good-looking people. They usually will take them off of modeling agency sites, but also there were so many personal pictures too. He sent me pictures of a person in uniform, very good-looking. Also pictures with him with a child. Also pictures with him with friends. Pictures with the United States Department of Defense seal in the background, pictures with the uniform. So I thought it was all legitimate. So this person, the other victim, is the person in the pictures who has no idea how his identity is being used.
Okay, so after you have conversations, this person obviously is everything you've been looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to see these pictures, and did that obviously make things much more, intense in terms of going back and forth?
It solidifies it. It makes you, because now you have in your picture, in your mind's eye, who you're talking to.
Okay.
And so you have a visual that makes it even more powerful.
Okay. And then eventually you get to the point where, in a lot of these types of scams, something comes up. You're having conversations going back and forth. Things sound like they're going pretty well. And then something comes up, meaning the person may need some money. And that eventually happened. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, a lot of times scammers have a child, and their child has a health issue. His was a daughter who supposedly had asthma, and that she recently had a horrible scare with asthma, was in the hospital. He wasn't allowed to go see her, and now the school that she was in, they were going to do a school trip, and he needed money to send her to on this trip to Disneyland.
Okay.
And the reason that he couldn't pay for it was because of him being in the military. He was sending his mother a fixed amount of money every single month for her to take care of the daughter. But because he didn't have access to his credit card or his bank accounts, he couldn't access that extra couple $1,000s to pay for the trip.
Okay.
So then I believed it,
Mhm.
and I sent it too.
Okay. And the first time you sent him money, how much money did you end up sending him?
I sent $2,700
Okay.
to the United Kingdom.
After you sent that money, then what happened?
Then very quickly he started to tell me about how when he was going to be coming home in December, the only way that he would be able to stay home and not go back on another tour was to have a charter business, and that he and some other pilots had invested in an airplane, and that something went wrong where everything was set up to be occurring in December. However, here it was in October, and the paperwork went through for the airplane, and he needed to fly out to Paris to test fly the plane, and he needed money to fly with a private charter from Kabul to Miami, and then from Miami to Paris,
Okay.
and that he needed me to send money to pay for this charter plane.
Okay.
And then that way he would be able to get the plane and start his charter business when he finally would come home in December.
Okay, so all of it sounds very believable to you. I mean, you're
Yes.
communicating with this person, and everything, the pictures, everything seems to fit together
Yes.
as your possible soulmate that you're talking to. So then he's talking about this business, and he's asking you for an investment or to send him some money.
Mm-hmm.
So when do you do that?
Really, like not long after I've sent the money for his daughter. So I'm going to say like a week later.
Well, Lilo, after sending this money, then, and you're over 20,000, and some, going into your savings, and when does it hit then that you've been scammed? What happens then?
It pretty much hit me as soon as I sent the last bit of money, because we've been so intense with our instant messages, constantly talking. The contact just stopped. And I went then on vacation, and I wasn't hearing from him, and I then also went on to some websites, romance scams websites, which educate you, and I started to read the information. I went, oh my goodness, this is me. This is like my story.
Yeah.
So that's when I realized that I had been scammed.
So, Lilo, through all this, and again, I think it's very brave of you to come on the show, and I do really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
What are some things in terms of prevention tips? On the show, we give out a lot of prevention tips and things, but from your own personal experience, what are some things that you can talk to our listeners directly about to watch out for in these types of scams?
Definitely, as soon as they ask for money, it's an absolute scam, because there are a lot of people that will only know somebody for a couple of minutes, and they'll ask for money for a camera or to be on Skype. So as soon as they ask for any kind of money, it doesn't matter how long you know them, for a month, for 6 months, for 2 minutes, that's a scam.
Yeah.
Even though you've become connected to them, you think they're real, they're not. They're complete liars. And then definitely that they will say if they don't have access to their credit cards, if they don't have access to their bank account, if they do have a young child or has a health issue, if they're not spelling correctly. This guy had used lowercase i's. His grammar was not that great, but I overlooked that because my own father doesn't have the best grammar and the spelling. So I overlooked that.
So that wasn't a red flag to you?
That wasn't a red flag to me immediately, no.
Okay. So what are in terms of I know that you contacted the Postal Inspection Service, and we're trying to work on some things. It's very difficult, as you know, because once the money leaves the country, it's very difficult to get it back.
It's gone. You don't get it back. And the unfortunate thing is, I did call my local FBI. I called the state's attorney. I called the police department. I called, you name it, I called them. Federal Trade Commission. Everybody said, we're sorry that this happened, but unless you've lost $1 million or more, or unless you're a corporation, the system is not set up to help the little people, the people that just lose a few thousand or 75,000. It's not enough money for them to use their manpower to help people like me.
Which is, it's very difficult, because I think the scammers, they use that to their advantage, and because once it's money, as you said, once it goes, it's wired out of the country, it's gone. Well, Lilo, Dr. Schuster, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure having
me.
you, and it's a great story, and hopefully people will pay attention to this and take some of the information that you've given them so they don't become a victim.
Thank you so much.